Hello and welcome to Tag1 Team Talks, the vlog and podcast of Tag1 Consulting. I'm Michael Meyers, the managing director of Tag1, and today we're doing a podcast where we're celebrating and looking back on 20 years of Drupal to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Drupal. We're really proud to have been a long part of Drupal's history and product development, and we've met so many amazing people over the years and along the way. And today I'm joined by Emma Jane Hogbin, who's working at the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Human Affairs, UN OCHA. And Emma, you and I have known each other well over a decade. I don't want to date us, but most of Drupal's 20
I
years.
think we met in DC, Washington, DC. I probably was at a BOF because that's kind of what we did. So what year was that? What year was DC?
It all kind of blurs
2009?
It could be. It was roughly in that era.
Yeah. My mom and my nephew came to the conference, and I've got a great picture, which I hope it still exists somewhere, of my nephew playing foosball with Moshe.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it's been a while. More than a decade and a couple of years.
We'll leave it at that. More than more than a decade. Like we were kids when when I first started working on Drupal. We were, I'm still a kid in my head at least. But for the folks that don't yet know you, can you give everybody just a quick background? You have done so many diverse things across the Drupal community. Can you give people a sense of Emma when it comes to Drupal?
Yeah, so I guess my sort of apologies to the Drupal community is that I've kind of been in hiding for the last 5 years or so, but I used to be much more involved in the community way back. And I guess we'll give the definition of what I mean by way back by saying I started Drupal back in the days when user IDs were still a thing, as opposed to just user names. And my user ID is a 4-digit user ID. So I have the illustrious 1773 as my user ID number. I'm way old.
Oh, that's quite the number too.
Yeah. But I first started, I guess, sort of 2003 or 2004. And like many other developers, I was going through at the time a rite of passage of writing my own content management system, because that seems to be a thing that we all need to do at least once before we give up and start working collaboratively with other people on an open source product. And at the time, I was good friends with James Walker. We both lived in Toronto, and he said, "Hey, check out this Drupal thing. You may find it interesting and useful." At the time, you had to, at least my memory of it is that you had to create a user account to download the code, which I'm pretty sure is how I ended up with a high or a low user ID. And I don't know that that's a true memory, but I have a memory of this.
I crush his mind, by the way.
Crushes many people.
I'm like the low 5 digits. So 4 digits is pretty early on.
Yeah. And so at the time I was looking at, oh gosh, this is so long ago. I was building a system that was going to be used to teach languages at a university, and they needed a system where the content could exist in multiple languages. So the post might be in Italian, and then the responses might be in English, but they needed to be able to switch back and forth between the two languages. So I needed a way of storing those multiple languages. And at the time, again, Waka pointed me to Drupal and said, "Hey, take a look." And I went, "Thank you very much," and ripped out the translation tables and put them into my own content management system. Went away for a few years. Of course, the product that I built went nowhere. And then I sort of circled back to the Drupal community in the days of the 4.6 to 4.7 transition, and really got involved in the community around the Drupal 5 to 6 transition. So my first big Drupal event was DrupalCon Szeged, where Angie was announced as the Drupal 6 core maintainer. And I was quite involved in the community for the first, I shouldn't say first, for sort of those, maybe I want to say 5 or 10 years kind of in between. And I worked with Konstantin Kaper to write the Drupal, front-end Drupal, and then went on, so that was Drupal 6. And it was sort of the accompanying book, I felt, to Lullabot's site building guide. And it was I was so lucky in terms of that opportunity that they had already put out their table of contents, and we were able to pivot and say, let's make the theming guide that goes along with. And it was just such a great opportunity, to have the work that Lullabot was doing and feel like I had this place in the community that I didn't need to be competing directly with anyone, but I could find my own place. So I focused a lot on front end development, but from a sort of an intro perspective. Konstantin has gone on to do amazing things with front end development work, and just the where JavaScript has gone in terms of as a programming language and where he saw that it would go is blown my mind. But I sort of focused on the intro to theming side of things, and was quite involved in the Drupal community, giving conference presentations and trainings. I ended up writing a second book on Drupal User's Guide, which was more site building for Drupal 7. And then a couple of years after that, I wrote a book on Git, which was how do you collaborate in a team of developers. So it has a few Git commands in it, but it's more, how do you work together to come up with a workflow? How do you commit to a workflow and use a workflow when Git doesn't really care what you do? It has some things it's very opinionated about, but ultimately you can choose 100 different ways of doing it. So how, as a team, do you come together to collaborate on it? So then after Git for Teams, I guess it was within a year or two that I started working for the United Nations. And I've kind of decreased my community involvement since then, in part because I've been, I think, consumed in a good way by my job. So it's been a bit sad for me to not be as involved in the community, but it's that community work that I feel I've brought into the job, and I'm trying to reinforce with the team and push them to contribute back wherever they can and try and give them the space to do that.
Yeah. Waka, amazing. One of the first big contributors. He and Boris Mann created Bright, the first ever Drupal consulting company. Waka was the author of the Pants module,
Yes.
which was like the how you learn Drupal for the longest time.
Yeah.
So pretty amazing guy to know, especially back then. You also are famous for clothing, for a pair of socks, if I recall.
True. So I was the first person to apply the GPL license to a pair of knitted socks, and they, I assume, still exist out in the wild. I only ever knit the one pair for Waka as thanks for all the tutoring and mentorship that he'd given me over the years. And it's got a DrupalCon on the heel. I'm sure we can dig out some old photos of that somewhere. And the GPL license was applied to the DrupalCon because of the nature of the license. I couldn't use the DrupalCon image unless I was also willing to extend that license to others as well, to be able to reuse the knitted version of the DrupalCon. So I sort of became that first person, but only due to the restrictions or benefits, I guess, if you want to say, of the GPL. So.
And I don't know if this is controversial, and maybe we have to edit this out. But sometime I want to say around, I think it was like 2010, you were famous for something to do with unicorns.
Oh gosh, yeah. So I think this would have been an OSCON conference. Someone will, I'm sure, remind me what the actual conference was. And I had given a few presentations on what it was like to be a woman in open source computing, and was at a conference and out for lunch with two other women, Gabby and Serena. And we sort of came to realize that this was, another rite of passage, just like writing a CMS was a rite of passage. If you're a woman in open source, you will eventually give a talk about being a woman in open source. And this became affectionately referred to as the unicorn law. And I think it's something that, here we are the day after International Women's Day, having this talk, now that I've dated it. Sorry, you may want to edit that bit out. But I think it's still a really important process that a lot of women go through, and women and other minorities within the computing field go through, where you feel like you're alone in your experiences, and then you have the opportunity to talk about those experiences, and you realize that it's a very common experience to feel alone and then feel part of a larger community. So the unicorn law celebrates, I guess, that experience and hopefully helps individuals to feel like they're not alone, even if they are in a minority situation.
I think Drupal does better than many in a lot of instances. It's a very welcoming and open and diverse community, but we still need to do so much more. And I think we recognize that and are making efforts to do so. And is, a pioneer of the community and, forming groups within the community to help foster that. Thank you. That's been amazing. And, we'll keep carrying the torch, I hope. And
Yeah. Well, and one of the most exciting things for me as well was, I certainly was very involved in the Drupal community. And then whether it was consciously or not, I really took a step back from applying to conferences and applying to give those presentations, because I felt that it was important that more than just me have that opportunity to stand up on stage, to be recognized. And it was, standing up on a stage was how I had the opportunity to work with Constantine on front-end Drupal. I was recognized by a publisher as having someone, as having some skills that maybe could be put into book form. And I feel it is so important for the current generation. I'm in my 40s, but I'm not that old for the current generation to stand up and support where they can a diverse community, and then to step aside and amplify the voices of the next set of people who are wanting to come along and have that opportunity as well.
Our grandchildren, yeah, we're like, make it seem like we're so old.
But we kind of are. Do you TikTok?
Yeah. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have a memory. I think you switched to becoming like a mentor. I think I remember doing a talk at DrupalCon, and in order to do it, I had to go to a class with Emma. Like all the speakers were required to go to like a webinar with you to learn how to give a presentation. And I was like, like I've done so many talks, like I can't believe I have to do this. And I, and I went, and I love and respect you, but I was just like, oh, I can't believe I have to do this shit. And I went, and I learned so much. I was like, it was like one of those like teaching moments in life where I was like, oh wow, I could be such a better speaker. Like it was very helpful.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I'm glad you showed up even under duress. And I think that a lot of people have had a similar experience who've gone through sort of the conference presentation cycle. I know I went to a session that was given by, I'm going to blank on his name, Mr. Conway. What's his first name? In any case, that OSCON gave. And I was like, I've been giving public speaking, like I've been doing public speaking competitions since I was 12, 13 years old. Like I don't need help to stand up on stage and say words. And it was so good. It was so interesting to see someone else's perspective on how they put together a presentation, what they think is important, what's the timeline, how do you, what do you do a month out, what do you do a week out, what do you do the day before? So I think it's, it's not necessarily that I was any better than anyone else, but just having that structured time to think about how you give a presentation was something that the conference recognized as being important. And whether I drew the short straw or the long straw, I'm not entirely sure, but it was nice to be able to provide that feedback to people.
It was hugely helpful, and I think it's still helped me to this day. I've done a lot of talks since, and I'm, one, it's taught me that I could always learn something more about how to be a better speaker. but two, it was really helpful to this day. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Looking back on Drupal, do you have is there something that you're most proud of or stands out to you as like a really special moment?
I think the special moments and the stuff that I'm most proud of are things that the community wouldn't have necessarily seen or observed, in the sense of the personal aha moments that people in the community had around how to collaborate in an open space. And I feel like our community started out as a bunch of, I don't know if that's fair or not.
That's an interesting characterization. Personalities, huh?
But we had a lot of people who needed to be assertive to get their opinions heard in how they collaborated and how they worked together. And I feel like the biggest contributions that I'm most proud of were to help punt people into a room and have more nuanced conversations, or to talk to someone privately and say, I understand where you're coming from, but have you seen this from another perspective? And that I don't think I did any heavy lifting in terms of any of the code. I don't think I did any heavy lifting in terms of the community working group and really important work that happened to even set up and structure the community working group. But I feel like some of what I was able to do, which had the longest impact or long-term impacts, was to say to some of those really big personalities, like, what are you doing here? What's what are you trying to achieve, and how can we make your voice be heard and understood and respected in a way that acknowledges, how to phrase it, in a way that you can still have your voice, but it isn't a voice that threatens other people.
I remember when the Drupal Code of Conduct came out, which is really unfortunately named.
Yeah,
And,
well, or greatly named, depending on how you want to look at it.
And one of the things was about, profanity. And my first reaction was like, who the F would care? Like, it's my effing
Yeah.
right to,
Oh, I'm a big swear fan.
I grew up in, I'm a goddamn New Yorker. And, so I think that, again, I learned a lot from the community as to how my behavior and what I see as normal is, like, growing up in New York or whatever was natural to me, could be not just off-putting to somebody, but really, detrimental to having a conversation or an impact in that environment. And it, I don't know. I struggled to wrap my head around it for a while, and I still am. Frankly, I'm trying to learn and get out of my ways and be better. And so, again, thank you for, these aren't I don't think you should feel like they're unseen. I think that they are.
Well, hopefully they were done in a way that wasn't publicly humiliating someone or calling out behavior, and I think there's lots of places and opportunities for that. But I feel like in some ways my bigger contributions were being brash in the bar to the people who were being brash and saying, do you realize this thing that you're doing? And it's the late night conversations where meeting someone at their own, with their own language and in their own space, and saying, let's take a look at how this is being perceived in the wider community. And it, I don't know, I'm a little bit immature. On the best of days, a little bit immature.
Aren't we all?
So I certainly, I needed those course corrections to come back to me as well. But it was that, hopefully I guess in some cases, very loud conversations late at night with people that I feel I learned a lot, I grew a lot, and I hope that they had an impact as well in terms of how those people were able to then communicate and get their ideas across. I know it could be, for some, it was really frustrating because they felt they weren't being heard, and the only way that they knew to be heard was to be bigger and louder. And it was true to who they were, but it wasn't necessarily helping them to move their ideas forward.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite and least favorite Drupal feature? Don't hold back.
Oh,
be across any version.
Okay, so I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to go with these are not necessarily worst or best. These are, when you say, what are the Drupal features that you like most? And then these are the first two things that pop to my head. The first one is, and I'm horrible in my pronunciation of names, so I years later I should be able to do this by now. Amitai, I'm going to give as a worst and best feature. Like, I don't mean to say he's worst or best. Like, this is the first thing that popped to my head was him. And it's his, if he didn't get a session accepted, then he would just go and give it as a BOF. And he would put this incredible thought and energy into how he was going to portray the information in a way that was unique and challenging and a little bit off the wall. And, he wrote the original version. I think he was one of the original versions of organic groups, which has certainly been used by me on many different websites. And then the second sort of best or worst feature is Moshe Weitzman saying to me, my code's self-documenting. I don't need to write any documentation. And this was my thing. Documentation was my passion at the time. I was really involved in the Drupal docs community, and I'd written I would have written a book at that point already. And he was just like, I don't need to do that. My code self-documents. And whether he still remembers that conversation or not, I have no idea. But those are the two that just kind of spring to mind. And then, sort of the more I start thinking about individuals, then the more I kind of get fantastic memories of what it's been like to be part of the Drupal community. But I don't have a piece of code that I would give as my best or worst for Drupal specifically. It's the community, not the code.
You ever the politician, Emma, you should run for office.
Been there, done that, but thank
you. I'm going to try again, and you can dodge. That's fine. Do you see a major feature, or it could be something in the community, an event? Do you picture something as a major turning point or catalyst for Drupal, something that really, was a key part of what made it so successful?
In the variations of how you've asked that question, I would say the key part of what's made Drupal successful is by keeping the code free. And it didn't adopt the model that WordPress had in terms of charging money for code. And I think that's part of what has continued to attract me to Drupal, is that there is an openness to the collaboration. But when enterprise can come and take code from the community, we can use it and install it and not have to worry about it. We know it's correctly licensed. We know we're not having to worry about, it's gone through security process. And if it's outside of the security guidelines, it will be marked as such. I can trust that code for as much as we're going to use it. I can contribute that code back as an enterprise or as an individual. But that decision was very different than how WordPress went. And maybe WordPress ended up as more installs or a bigger percentage of the web or whatever it happens to be. But that aspect of it, I think, for me, was the key to its success in terms of its adoption. And the people who wanted to use it were different. They're just a different attraction than what a WordPress might have been. But I guess I have a hard time saying any one part of the code was the key point in terms of the success or the failure, because I'm one of the Kool-Aid kids. I really think it was the community that made Drupal what it is, not any one piece of code. And every piece of code that went into Drupal was reviewed by the community, had discussions with the community, sometimes arguments, sometimes falling out, sometimes massive celebrations. But without the people, it's just a bunch of code. And ultimately, it's a bunch of code that's going to be rewritten and refactored and gone in the future.
Yeah, so many amazing memories, so many amazing people. Drupal is, I think very special in its community, and I think widely recognized for that. I mean, there's just so many amazing people. What do you think Drupal needs now?
This is my third dodge. So I feel like I've come up to bat 3 times, and I'm going to give you, for the third time, a dodge.
Community, we need more community.
So my difficulty in this one is I haven't really been involved in the Drupal product or community really in the last several years. And I mean, the biggest involvement that I have right now in the community is the fact that I give a monthly donation, because my income is, I make money because Drupal exists. And I'm so grateful that Drupal has allowed me to develop my career, to champion my work in terms of putting me on a stage, to talk about things, to write books about it, to celebrate all the weirdness that is me. And so my biggest involvement right now is giving a little bit of money back every month to the association. So I don't know what Drupal needs right now,
I think you
because I'm
actually,
not involved.
I think you just hit on it. Actually, I think that's the perfect answer. I think that one of the things that Drupal needs more than anything is financial support from the people that have benefited from it, from the people that make a living off of it, from the organizations that use it. You know, less than a fraction, like 1/100th of 1% of the people that download and use Drupal contribute anything, whether that's code or funding, and so many benefit from it. And it's, you know, it's the, you know, the tragedy of the commons, the perennial problem with open source. And so, you know, with COVID, like many organizations, the DA almost went bankrupt, and there was a flood of support from people, from organizations, you know, and thankfully it's back into a good place. But it's, you know, let's be honest, it's never been in a great place.
No,
You know, they're not like, you know, money is not raining from the sky to support the
no.
DA. You know, money is not raining to support the development. And so, you know, that's amazing. I think the fact that you still give, even though you're not as involved as you once were, is amazing. And I, you know, I really do think that what the project needs, perhaps more than anything, is funding. And it's a very unique answer. So you didn't dodge. I think you hit a grand
Way to
slam.
reframe.
I learned from the best. Well, Emma, I know you thanked Waka, and I'm sure, you know, that there are many, many people along the way that helped you. But thinking back to those earliest days, and people like Waka, are there any individuals that you just want to say hi to, a shout out to, a thank you to?
Oh, so I genuinely am horrible with names. So I don't want to start playing the name game and forgetting people. I feel like I'm now, like, receiving my Oscar and I don't have my list written out of my hand. So I'm not sure who to thank, but I'll
Just,
thank my mom.
like, Michael, you're amazing. It's been great.
I definitely have a list of people that I would love to see you interview, and I'll slide you that list after we're done. But it's I guess everyone who has showed up to one of my talks, who bought a copy of my book, who supported my career as I tried to figure out what it meant to be increasingly less and less of a developer in a developer world. Anyone who has ever championed the non-technical side of what it means to be part of a software community gets my undying gratitude and thanks. I think it's easier to be a developer. People understand how that work happens, and I've had, like I said, I've had so many hallway conversations and opportunities where people have championed my work, and hey, thank you. It landed me a job at the UN. I appreciate your support.
Well, 1,173. What a UID. Emma, thank you so much for sitting down with us. What a wonderful trip down memory lane. I always love chatting, and I appreciate you sharing, you know, your Drupal backstory and history with everybody. Would love to see your list of folks. You know, we're talking about this before the interview. These have been so much fun to do for me, you know, especially, you know, in the age of COVID and not having conferences. Like, really the best part is the people, is the community, and I miss that so much. So it was really great to see you, and I hope that we can meet in person sometime this decade.
It would be great.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to our audience for tuning in.
Thank you.